Welcome one and all to the Stock Up Podcast YouTube channel. My name is Alex. An astute listener of the podcast may have noticed that during our Marvel Superheroes Top 10, our most recent episode, go check it out, put a link up here, we forgot to go over our Secrets of Strixhaven Top 10 at the end, which is something we typically do in our Top 10 episodes. We do a bit of a retrospective, usually in the sign-off, where we talk about a little bit of how we did for our last Top 10. So since we forgot to do that, basically is what happened, and I know we have a lot of patrons who look forward to that discussion. I'm just going to do a little brief video here talking about some of the things we got wrong in our top 10 and some of the things we got right. So to start, I think we'll go over some of the things that we either missed on or didn't get quite right. First of all, we look at our number one card, right? That what I would say is our most scrutinized pick. For number one, I had Traumatic Critique, and Jacob had Daydream. Now, both of us had both of these cards in our top 10. I had Daydream in 10th, so I thought it'd be more of like a role player in Standard, but not necessarily like one of the best cards in the set. And Jacob had Traumatic Critique in number 2. So as for Daydream, I think I was more right than Jacob. I don't fault him for putting it number 1. I think his logic was sound, actually. The Quantum Riddler ephemerate style of gameplay is like one of the best things you can do in Modern, and so a microcosm of that you could expect to be pretty good in Standard too. I do think Daydream Quantum Riddler is good. It's definitely kind of going to be a role player in the Momo deck going forward, I would say, and has potential homes in the future as like this sort of package that you can maybe insert into other white decks that work well with Daydream. That being said, it didn't improve the deck that much, at least not in like the right sort of matchups, and it's more just like a role player in Standard, I would say, than anything crazy. So like, top 10 is fitting, but maybe not the best card in the set. Traumatic Critique, this one we both thought really highly of, number 1 for me, number 2 for Jacob. I would say we were both overestimating the card a bit. Basically, it can be kind of expensive for what it does. I still think it is a strong card, right? Like, so I have seen people play with it in Modern to good effect, which is interesting. I mean, I know the formats are different, but anytime a card from Standard sees play in Modern, you really got to think it's got to be pretty powerful. And, it's always possible a card just isn't ready for Standard yet because of the way it is, but it could be later. I think Traumatic Critique fits in that category, but, credit where credit is due. For example, in the Spellmentals deck, which is the deck that I thought it would probably be the best and the easiest home for, I thought it'd be an easy 4 of. It does see play, but it sees like less play than another new card they got, which is Prismari Charm, which, by the way, Jacob had on his list at number 7. And most of the lists I see play like 3 or 4 Prismari Charms. They only play 1 to 2 Traumatic Critiques. This doesn't necessarily mean Traumatic Critique is worse, because it could have a bigger effect on the game overall, even though you play less copies in your deck, and I think in some sense that's true. But I thought Traumatic Critique would see play in control decks. I thought it would see play in almost every blue-red deck, maybe even Is It Prowess in small numbers, to go with Colostrum Stallions, this sort of thing. It sort of does, but it's really not like the best card in the set, I would say. So that's like a small miss there. Another miss, I would say, is, and this is like a small one, because this card does see play, and this would be Flashback. Jacob put it at number 4, I put it at number 5. Flashback is okay. It's funny because when I was rating this card, I kind of, in the back of my mind, was like, this card might just be like so mediocre, and I think it kind of is. Like, it really just doesn't do a whole lot, You're kind of adding a mana to a spell you're going to cast just to gain like a bit of versatility, and you also have the floor of not being able to cast it if like you don't have a good spell in your yard at all. So it's really just kind of a mediocre card. It doesn't see a ton of play. I mean, people do play it sometimes. I think it's like a one of in Jeskai Revelation decks, so they can flashback extra Jeskai Revelations. It does have the unique effect there also of in control mirrors. It can be like a second copy of Negate, or a 5th copy Revelation, and then against an aggressive deck, you can sometimes still have another removal spell, essentially. So it's an okay card. I definitely wouldn't have put it in my top 5 in hindsight, and I think Jacob, probably feel the same way. So kind of a miss there. Other than that, Jacob's list is like pretty good. Pretty much every card on his list saw play. Me, on the other hand, I had several on my list towards the bottom that I had hopes for that really haven't seen much play. So These are like Vastland Scavenger, Withering Curse, Emeritus of Truce. Of these, Withering Curse is probably the best. You know, it works in some shells with Delian Fell. I think it's like a fringe role player that just doesn't really have a good place in the format, but could be good in the future. These other two cards, Emeritus of Truce specifically, I kind of didn't understand the play pattern very well of this card. Like there's some things like your opponent can blow it out with removal that I wasn't really contemplating, this sort of thing. I just don't think that's a great card. Vastland Scavenger. This is an example of me just coming back to the game recently, I think, where a card like this 5 years ago would have been really good, but nowadays, really just 3 mana, 4/4, sorcery speed, no ATB, no nothing like that, just doesn't cut it. I also had Splatter Technique on my list, and this one I'm like relatively happy to have on. It's definitely, you know, if I would revise my list, there's other cards I would have put, and this would have been maybe like an honorable mention, but I do think it is a card that fits a role I imagined and is a decently underrated card still. That being said, does it deserve to be on the top 10? Not really. So those were our biggest misses, I would say, at least for things we had on the list. Now, as for cards that we missed, we got things like, you know, Impractical Joke, Petrified Hamlet, End of the Hunt. We mentioned those in our honorable mentions, and I think those are pretty good ones. I would say the biggest card we missed, you know, like Together as Onesies play a little bit, but that's not a huge deal. I wouldn't say that's a big one. Even Emeritus of Ideation, we both knew that that was like a semi-decent card, but I think we were both right in assuming that overall the blue control options that existed are better. Now, maybe it could have been a top 10 over some of these cards on my list, but probably not over Jacob's. I mean, it's okay in like the Blue-Black Demons deck, that sort of thing, but it's nothing to write home about, I would say. The big one we definitely missed would be Practiced Offense. So this is just proven to be a really powerful card, sort of definitely a sleeper. The damage output it puts out is really strong. And then, of course, Flashback, right? Just anytime you take a strong spell that has a strong effect on the game and you add Flashback to it, if the Flashback cost is at all reasonable, in this case, it's actually cheaper than the mana cost of the actual card, so you can kind of get a discount on it if you're willing to discard it or mill it, that sort of things. I mean, it really just makes the card extremely strong. So much so that people are trying this card in Modern, and it's actually not so bad there, so that's kind of a tell. But I would say this is a much bigger pickup than, say, like Daydream is for, you know, white aggro decks, Momo decks, these sorts of things. They're almost single-handedly making, like, green-white aggressive decks pretty strong in Standard. Again, the Momo decks play it, the Mardu discard deck plays it. It's just a super strong card, and I think we're going to be seeing a lot in the future, basically. Because it just fits in. It's the kind of card that can just fit into any white aggressive deck, and most white decks are aggressive decks, and it doesn't need anything else. You don't, like, if your deck has creatures, and it's white and it's aggressive, it probably wants this card. So, a lot of this card to come. Definitely one of the best cards in the set, and we kind of both missed it. So, those are the biggest losses, I would say. Now, we also had some wins, especially Jacob had some really good ones. He put Tablet of Discovery at number 3. This is great because Tablet of Discovery at the time, I didn't see many people talking about it. I read it and thought it was a decent card, but I thought it was probably worse than like the Resonating Loot as an example, and I didn't even put that on my top 10, so that's kind of how I thought of it. Jacob put Tablet of Discovery at number 3, and he was kind of right. This card single-handedly, I would say, took the Jeskai or 4-color or 5-color control decks from fringe playable kind of mediocre decks to basically one of the top decks in the format, just being able to double ramp into Jeskai Revelation, which is, you know, one of the only top ends in this format that actually works because of the power of things like Storm Chaser's talent for decks to go really late. Storm Chaser's talent, of course, being like an aggressive one-drop that also, for some reason, is one of the best late games in the format with Boomerang Basics. So you really need a lot of power to go over that. And Tablet of Discovery gives you the mana to do the things that would require a control deck to go over the top of something like that. So super excellent card. I mean, just on the face of it, you know, it's kind of a 2-for-1 if you build your deck around it, it being a 3-mana rock that adds red, just like a Power Stone sort of thing. And then also some non-0% of the time, you're just going to mill a card over. And I mean, I think this happens basically half the time when in reality. Obviously, on turn 3, if you just run this out, you're forgoing that extra card advantage. But anytime you play it after that, there's a really good chance you just hit a land or a spell you can cast. So super great card. Definitely one of the best cards on this in the set, so good job to Jacob. Some other cards we had high in our list. Professor Delian Fell. I had number 2. Jacob had number 6. I actually am not... I don't think this was a a miss, really, to have it at number 2. I think Delian Fell has proven itself to be a very powerful card. It almost single-handedly made green-black, which was like a pretty terrible deck, even worse than the Jeskai decks, I would say, into an almost good deck. And it is seeing play in Pioneer, where black mid-range decks have some more tools. They have, Thoughtseize, Abrupt Decay, Shieldred, Fatal Push, these sorts of things. So Delian Fell, I think, has a bright future in Standard, even though it's not seeing a ton of play right now because of just how powerful it is. I think if they print the right cards or ban the right combination of cards, perhaps, that it will definitely see play. Is it the second best card in the set? I don't know, but it's probably top 5. Like, it's really good. So, happy with that. We both said Flow State and Erode were going to be pretty good cards. I think these are pretty easy ones. We had these high on the list. Flow State, a little boring, but I mean, it's taking the place of Stock Up, right? It is a prowess pretty much, and Stock Up is one of the best cards in Standard, so home run there. Erode, not very exciting, right? But definitely seeing a lot of play, and definitely probably will continue to see a lot of play. So even though it's not an amazing card, that one is definitely a hit. Some of the things that round up Jacob's list, he had Colostrum Stallion, pretty good, and he had Great Hall of the Biblioplex. I suppose this is another one I missed. I correctly guessed that the creature mode on it was not very good. Every time I play with this card, the creature mode continues to underimpress, but the thing is the mana mode I totally underestimated. And honestly, Jacob only putting it at level 10, in a way he underestimated too. Now, I'll give him much more credit because he actually realized that it was a good card for Standard, and I kind of didn't. But yeah, this is easily one of the best cards in the set. Great Hall of the Biblioplex, just the mana ability, basically. It's not that difficult to build a spell-slinging control deck in this format, with all the Izzet cards being so good, all the good cards from this set, things like Jeskai Revelation, etc. And of course, not every card in your deck has to be a instant or sorcery, but you can pretty easily make a lot of your cards that, and just the fact that this then becomes an always untapped 5-color land is pretty insane. So, Great Hall of the Biblioplex, amazing card, seeing a bit of play in Eternal formats, and will probably be along for the ride in Standard for as long as it is legal, I imagine. It opens up a ton of possibilities, single-handedly letting people play cards like Together as One or Arcane Omens, which may seem a little silly in Standard, but that is just the power of the Great Hall of the Biblioplex, I would say. So, yeah, that's kind of how we did. Overall, as per usual, Jacob's list was a little better than mine, so I got some catching up to do in my card evaluation skills, but I think we did pretty good overall. These are these have shown me that evaluating cards is really hard, especially narrowing things down like this. In a lot of our top 10s, we missed a lot of cards. We've gotten things right too, but it's tough. It's tough to perfectly evaluate cards. And of course, the context of the format matters, right? So a card might be powerful on its own, but if it's not good in any of the formats, then what's the point? So that is our top 10 for Strixhaven. Go check out our top 10 for Marvel superheroes when you get a chance. And I'm actually looking forward to Marvel superheroes dropping on MTG Arena next week. So look forward to some decks. Definitely going to be brewing a lot with some of the new cards and also some of the cards on our top 10s for that set. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.